It is episode number 3 of The Stampede, a podcast on the Texas Longhorns brought to you by Rise Energy Strips. We welcome in head coach Mac Brown and quarterback Vince Young alongside me. I'm Bob Ballou, the sports director at CBS Austin. We're excited for another great episode today. Don't forget, you can find our podcast anywhere you get your podcast. You can watch us on YouTube or go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and find us there. You can also go anywhere on social media and find us at The Stampede UT. We love interacting with you guys and talking about things that have happened in the pod or what's coming up. Vince, Mac, we've got a great episode today. How excited are you guys for this one?
Very. I'm pretty much always excited about podcast day. I get to hang out with Mac Daddy and then my guy Bob with the straight hair. It's all nice and lined up, baby. I love it.
It is fun. It's like game time. It's an opportunity for us to take the fans inside.
Yeah. Inside
our locker room when we were playing, inside the field, inside the Texas team now. We've got a conversation with Coach Sark coming up here in a few minutes, which everybody will love to hear, and unbelievable for him to take his time during preseason camp. I wouldn't have done that. So we appreciate so much his time today and can't wait to talk to him.
Mac, there would have been one way you would have done it, right?
Yeah, Coach Royal said it. I would have said, what time? We're going to move practice.
Right.
Well, we will
say no to that guy.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. We have a great interview with Steve Sarkisian coming up later in the show. We're excited to talk about that. We'll get into a little bit about what's going on at preseason camp. Obviously, the loss of Andre Kojo and what that means, Kojo, and what that means for the offensive line and the depth at offensive tackle. But we're going to start with something that has never happened before in the history of the University of Texas, and that is in the coaches poll. Texas is ranked number 1 to start the season. Obviously, Mac and Vince were ranked number 2 back in 2005. My guy Danny Davis over at the Statesman pulled out this stat. Since the BCS CFP era started, only 3 teams have started the year number 1 and then finished it that way too. 1999 Florida State, 2004 USC, and 2017 Alabama. So there's a lot of pressure on Texas if they're going to get this thing done. It's been 8 years since it happened. What do you guys make of this? Obviously, when you were number 2, there was no question USC was going to enter the year number 1 because of what they had accomplished. So you had that kind of motivation toward going there. Texas hasn't been number 1. They've got the motivation of finishing there. What do you guys make of Texas starting this season number 1 in the country? Vince, what kind of pressure does that put on this team?
Well, I mean, once you have an opportunity to go play at the University of Texas, every day is pressure. Even going to class with 200 kids in one classroom is pressure. So, if you are a Texas player, you already have accepted that when you walk into your locker room, when you put that jersey on, after that first team meeting, you already know that everybody's coming for you. Even the guys that you supposed to beat is going to try to play their best game. And I remember playing Louisiana State, and their first half was unbelievable. I think they gave us everything they can give us that first half. So when you hear these things, first of all, Coach Brown and the coaching staff does a great job of tuning that stuff out from us. But as a player, you already pretty much used to it. You hear all the hooplas about, right now these guys are driving Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all this type of stuff is going on. They feel like we're not prepared and we're not getting ready. But as what, like I said, coaches they do a great job of making sure that they weave that stuff out, and we need to focus on what we need to focus on. And one of the things Coach does a great job is don't bite the cheese. Do not eat that cheese, because once you eat it, then you go out there and drop an egg and get your butt whooped. So we always expect that. And it's just a great thing that the guys are starting number 1, but I really feel like they're not even paying attention to that.
But Mac, they hear it, right? I mean, they see it, they hear it. What's the toughest part of getting their minds right when it comes to starting the season?
The message to your team and your staff is, number 1, you want to be up there. Whether it's 1 through 5, you want to be one of the best teams in the country. And Coach Sarkisian has got Texas considered being one of the best teams in the country. I do not like preseason polls because they don't matter.
Right.
They're gone. After week 1, they're gone. They're even redone. And when you start looking at, if we started to go back and fire every media person that missed on who the best teams were, we wouldn't have any media because they miss them. Because nobody knows. Nobody knows about chemistry. Nobody knows about depth. Nobody knows about injuries. There's so many things that change. And Vince mentioned it, but Coach Parcells called me the week after we had beaten Kansas 66-14, or we killed them, and we're getting ready to go play A&M. And he says, "You're in trouble, man." He was the head coach of the Cowboys. and this is a message to the team. And I said, "What do you mean? We just killed Kansas, Coach. We're undefeated. We got USC." And he said, "Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You're not even talking about A&M. A&M's 4-7. A&M's had a bad year. They're going to play their national championship against you, man, on Thanksgiving. You're talking about USC. You're not even talking about Colorado. So you're about to get beat because you're like a big rat and you're eating a poison cheese and you're going to die. You're going to die because you're eating that cheese." Well, I got so nervous talking to him. I ran to Chip Robertson, our equipment manager. I got strings of cheese and I hung them from every locker. VY remembers I put the quote up there and I said, "Man,
Right.
let's don't be that fat rat eating that poison cheese, man. We're going to die. Let's go back and focus."
So funny.
And one of the things that Steve's got to do with all the hype, Arch has got to do with all the hype, you've got to create an edge every day.
Yeah.
Every day in practice. That's what Vince did. Vince and our defense were so competitive against each other, they couldn't go to practice and not be ready to play. So if you practice with an edge every day, you're going to play with an edge. If you're lazy and practice some, it's going to show up again, man. And it'll show up and bite you at the wrong times.
And Bob, if you was not prepared to go to practice, you would get embarrassed.
Yeah. No, they
Our
love
defense, Michael Huff, those guys did not play at all because they wanted us to do up downs. They wanted us to get extra laps. And who want extra laps during camp?
Yeah, Bob, we had the
It's too
team
damn
that
hot
lost,
out there.
Yeah, the team that lost, after 2.5 hours of 105 degree heat. The team that lost had to run laps. And also we had a thing, NOSs, not our standards.
Yeah.
So if Vince had messed something up, which he never did, ever. But if he had messed something up, he would have, if he had 2 mistakes during practice, he would have to get out in the middle of a circle of the offense and say, "My name's Vince Young. I've got 2 NOSs," and everybody have to do up downs.
Yeah.
In his honor. And we did that with everybody on the team. So it just it held everybody at a very high standard.
Yeah.
Well, I know we could continue to go deep into this and get more about the cheese and the practices and some of the things that happened, and we will, but we've got a very important guest that's waiting for us. So on the other side of our break, we're going to come back and we're going to talk to the head football coach at Texas, Steve Sarkisian. We're going to let Mac and Vince kind of press him on maybe what their most pressing questions are right now and get into a lot of things Texas football with the head coach at Texas, Steve Sarkisian. That's coming up. This is The Stampede, a podcast on the Texas Longhorns. We're back after this.
Feeling drained, but don't want another sugary drink or coffee crash? Say hello to Rise Energy Strips, your new go-to for clean, fast energy.
Each strip delivers 50 milligrams of caffeine, vitamin B12, L-theanine, and electrolytes, all in one tiny berry-flavored strip. Just pop it under your tongue and feel the boost in seconds. No jitters, no water, no crash. It's vegan, sugar-free, and absorbs to 5 times faster than pills or drinks.
Perfect for work, workouts, or whatever you need to power up fast. Ready to rise?
Get 25% off your first order of strips at riseup.com/stampede.
That's RIIZEUP.com, because energy should be smart, simple, and effective. All right, I do not remember if Mac Brown and Vince Young played a game where Steve Sarkisian was on the opposing sideline. And the reason I don't remember is because Steve Sarkisian is our guest today, and we will not go there. I'll tell you where we will go, though. In the last 2 seasons, the University of Texas finished the season number 4 and number 3 in the country. The last coach to do that at Texas, 2008 and 2009, when Mac Brown did it, and Texas finished number 4 and number 2. So we thought, what better way to sit back, relax, and enjoy and let these guys talk and have a great conversation today between 3 football legendary minds. We welcome in Steve Sarkisian to the Stampede podcast. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. We hope this interview is a very unique one for you today.
No, this is awesome. This is great. Thanks, guys, for having me on. And I'll reflect on that game really quickly. Not necessarily the game. I want to talk about a dinner that we had. What was that, Coach? Maybe 2 or 3 nights before the ball game. You go to these, Rose Bowls and things, they always do a dinner with both staffs, right? The one team and the other team and their wives, and everybody comes together And the way they had set up the tables, we were sitting with our own staff, and then Texas's staff was sitting with their own staff. And Coach Brown wanted Coach Carroll to sit at another table, and Coach Brown, I'm gonna let you talk about that and the reasoning behind that. But what that did was bring Coach Brown and Sally to sit next to me, and we had a fabulous night that night, and it was a lot of fun. And I didn't think Coach Brown would have remembered me from Adam. And sure enough, he remembered that dinner the first time I saw him when we talked about me taking this job. So that was an impactful opportunity for me. Spend a couple hours with Coach Brown, a bunch of wisdom, a bunch of funny stories, and a great time, and a ton of respect for the team that he had assembled that year with VY, and they went on to beat our butt, man. So that's the life of a competitor, you know. But Coach, I don't know if you wanted to even get into that of how that happened.
Yeah, Steve, Coach Royal was there, and you guys had won 2 national championships. You had 33 straight wins, and Coach Royal won 3 national championships. So I figured, probably going to win another one. So let's get Pete next to Coach Royal, because I was around Coach Royal all the time. I knew Pete well. Let them talk about culture, strategy, and they just had a blast. And then I do remember you were wonderful. Lane sat back in the corner by himself. So we didn't have a chance to talk to him, which hadn't changed some in ways, but it was really a fun night when staffs get together. And for Pete, who I just admire so much for what he's accomplished. Now he's back on the field again. I saw him out there the other day, tackling a big offensive lineman, throwing him down, and having fun. At my age, really, we're the same age, and that was just a game we'll never forget. I don't know, Bob, that I would have started this interview with Steve with that question, but I do think it was a great game.
Well, we've got a lot of questions to get into, and I wanted kind of for this conversation to evolve by starting with kind of the most pressing question that Mac and Vince have for Coach Sarkisian. So, Vince, why don't you start? What's your most pressing question for Coach right now?
This is funny. I want to know, how do you control your emotions? Being a playing quarterback at BYU and understanding how you want to be out there and put a helmet on and go to war as well. When you go behind the scenes in your office, how do you control your emotions? That's what I want
You
to
know,
know.
I got to get it out first of all. So first of all, I got to do some sort of exercise, VY. Like, I got to do something. I have to, like, kind of flush my system every day. 2, I'm still highly competitive that way, you
Right.
know, and you've been to enough practices, and I love coaching the quarterbacks. I love being around them. I think I've evolved over the years of not being so emotional with the quarterback. But I still coach them hard. You know, there's still a standard and expectation of how I would want those guys to play. And not everything's going to be perfect. You know that better than
Right.
anybody. You know, your ability to make plays when there's not a play to be made, your ability to make that throw when a guy's covered, but trust him to make that catch. Your ability to know when there's a free blitzer, and am I going to stand in there and make the throw? Or am I going to make him miss? What are you going to do?
Mhm.
I just think that I love that aspect of the game. I love coaching that part of the game, but I get a lot of that out on my own personal time or in practice, so that in game I try to stay as composed as I can. You know, I don't want to. I try my best not to get emotional in game, because I want those guys to feel a sense of confidence and belief in what they're doing.
Yeah. Because when I give you dab on the sideline before the game, that handshake is strong as hell.
I'm
I'm like,
ready
oh
to
yeah,
go,
Coach
man.
ready. I'm like,
I'm
Coach
ready to
ready.
go.
He
Yeah.
ready to go.
I put the blinders on, and I liked it. You know, Coach Brown, I don't know how it was for you. I like to go on the field early. You know, I'm not one of the head coaches. I have a hard time just sitting in the coach's locker room and tapping my foot and watching other games. I cannot do it. So
Right.
when the kickers go out, I go take the field, and I really just kind of start pacing, man. But the blinders are on, and I'm playing the game in my head. My first,
Mhm.
3rd and 2. You know, what are we going to do in the red area? Or what? All right, what? How am I going to, just replaying? Am I going to be aggressive on 4th down? Am I not? Are we going to fake this punt? Or are we not? Right? All these things are going through your head, and I'm
Right.
playing the game. But the blinders are on for sure, man. And
That's
by the
good.
time the ball's getting ready to kick off, I'm pretty locked in, ready to go.
That's good.
And Steve, by the time I would go on the field, Vince is out there dancing and high fiving and singing, and
I'm
I'm
trying to
thinking,
keep calm too.
Jesus Christ,
And that
what a-
probably felt good. Like, okay, he's ready to go. I'm good now.
he's ready to go. And I knew he was so focused. He was just trying to get everybody else stirred up. Steve,
Yeah.
the unique to have just played Ohio State, and
Yeah.
then they've changed 2 coordinators, and then you open up with not only a team you just played in the semifinals, but you're opening up with a top 5 team, and you're the number 1 team in the country. What do you use the previous game for in preparing for this one?
I think so much. One, personnel, right? I mean, there's still plenty of personnel on both teams in the matchup wise. I mean, it's easy to talk about Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, right? And they're the easy ones, right? I mean, they were both making, both playmakers, but there's plenty of other players, that Carnell Tates of the world that we know, and Sonny Styles of the world on defense that we're aware of. And so I think from a personnel standpoint, there's plenty to gain there. I think too, style of play, at the end of the day, I think we have a style of play that we believe in. I think, Ryan Day, and he's done a great job. They have a style of play that they believe in. And then it's like, okay, how are we going to incorporate? Both of us lost a lot of players, as much as we're ranked high, 1 and 2, to think that I think there's 20. Bob, you might know this answer better than me, but we had 12. Did they have 14 guys drafted?
14.
I think they had
Mhm.
14.
You're talking about 26 NFL draft picks are gone,
Right.
not to mention some free agents. And here are both teams again, 1 and 2 in the country. I think it's a credit to both organizations of their, the talent acquisition and the development of talent in their programs. But there's some new faces too. The hardest part with these guys, I think offensively, their identity is their identity. And I'm sure, Brian Hartline and Ryan Day, they're going to have some new wrinkles, but I don't think we're going to see an overhaul of change of who they are offensively, right? Some of the faces have changed, but not a real overhaul. Defensively is the more difficult part. It's one thing to change coordinators and to change coordinators from a college coordinator coming in that you have some film on, but here's an NFL coordinator in Matt Patricia, who his last NFL job was actually as an NFL head coach, and he was out for a year. So he really hasn't been a coordinator for almost 5 years. And so how do you go back and how do you look? And then to credit to Ohio State, Jim Knowles did a heck of a job, especially the second half of last season. So what do they keep that Jim Knowles did? What do they incorporate from Matt Patricia? And then what does he actually call when the games come, right? It's not like what just you install, but what does he want to call when the games come? Last year we played Michigan in week 2. Wink Martindale had never coached in college football, or at least for I don't know how long. And so, I mean, we were watching Baltimore Ravens tape, we were watching New York Giants film, and this year's no different, right? It's like you're studying, the Detroit Lions, you're studying the New England Patriots, you're still looking at Ohio State film. But at the end of the day, you have to call what you believe in, and hopefully you have enough answers in those plays that the quarterback, the receivers, the O-line can block it. The quarterback knows where to go with the ball. And then you're going to have to evolve as the game goes. Ironically, in that 04 season, 05 season, whatever that season was, when we played y'all at the end of the year, we opened that season at Hawaii. And June Jones was the head coach. And he hired that year Jerry Glanville to come coach the defense. And I remember thinking we were going back to watching Atlanta Falcons tape of Jerry Glanville with Deion Sanders playing man-free coverage and bare fronts. And lo and behold, that's exactly what they did. You just don't know. These are the tough ones. You just try to lean into what you believe in and what you're good at, and then have the ability to hopefully evolve as the game goes, predicated on how they're playing the game.
Yeah, Steve, it's interesting, and especially with Archie's inexperience, that fans would have to understand you're going to be possibly changing game plans during the first quarter
For sure.
because you don't know what they're going to do, just like
Yeah.
Michigan last year. And it's
No.
just so it's so important to be able to adjust.
No doubt. And I actually had to learn that here over time. we felt that at Alabama. We were so good offensively that like we were always going to get some new defenses that people were going to pull out that they save for you. But I learned that here really quickly. People save some of their stuff for Texas, right?
Yeah.
We're obviously the game that's circled on just about everybody's schedule, and the couple exotic blitzes that they haven't shown all year, the disguising of coverages, the front, differences. Teams have been 4 down fronts all year. We show up, they're playing a 3 down front and a 3 safety defense. We're like, this hadn't done this all year. So I think we're a lot more well versed now to handle that, coach. To where I don't know if I could have said that a few years ago. I think we almost would be surprised and then react.
Mm.
I think we're a lot more forward thinking. We're looking around the corner per se of what's coming. And I think our ability to adjust in game has evolved and gotten much better over the past couple of years. I think that's helped us in some games, quite frankly.
Vince?
Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear because, like you said, every every game for the opponent, they circling us because you're going to get their best because they can potentially go to the NFL from off their game.
Right.
But I also want to talk about how do you like the receivers right now? Who's stepping up? Who's making some noise? And who's being a leader and things like that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because I think there's so many aspects of this team that get talked about. Some of them being strengths, some of them being kind of question marks or concerns. And the receivers sometimes like are just kind of flying under the radar right
Right,
now.
right.
And I really like this group. I really like Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore, the two guys that are kind of coming back from last year's team. I mean, DeAndre played in the slot for us all year and had some really big games. I don't know
Yeah,
if we beat Vanderbilt without DeAndre Moore.
exactly.
Played a huge impact in the SEC championship game to get that game to overtime. He had some really impactful plays for us there. Ryan, if it probably wasn't for Matt Gold and Isaiah Bond, is probably a day one starter as a true freshman. He might be getting talked about like a Ryan Williams or a Jeremiah Smith. He didn't have as many targets, but you look at the average yards per catch, you look at the explosive plays, you look at his ability to run the ball when we asked him to do that. So really high hopes for him. And then, Parker Livingstone had a great spring, a guy who was
Mhm.
a redshirt freshman last year who we like there. And then the other young man that we brought from Stanford, Emmett Mosley, we love. Here's a true freshman at Stanford a year ago. I think had just about 50 catches in 9 games. Really strong player. He's about 6'2", 210 pounds, but can run. Very smart, very high football IQ. So I really like those four. And then you look at this next group of players that are younger players, all very talented. You look at Kalik Lockett, you look at Jamie French, you look at Michael Terry, you look at Dalen McCutcheon, and then you really look at Aaron Butler in that group too. So here's 5 more guys that to me all are going to find a role on this team, and we're going to need them to. As you know, it's always great when you go into a season where you feel like you can count on 6 receivers,
Correct.
right? And you feel comfortable with that. Who are your frontline guys? Who's that next tier? But these guys have really come along. I've been, from where they were in spring practice to where we are today after 6 practices. I'm pumped about this group. They got playmaking ability. They're tough. They're physical. We're a lot more size than we've had in years past. We've got good length in that room. They're physical run blockers, which we need to run the ball better than we did a year ago.
Yeah.
So all in all, I like the room. I like the leadership of DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo. And I think I like the rapport with Arch. Arch has got good rapport with this group of guys. And so, we're going to need them. We're going to need them to make these explosive plays. I think last year we were number 2 or number 3 in the country in explosive plays. And that's when we're really good, right? Creating explosive plays and ultimately cashing those into points. But that room's going to have a big responsibility to handle a lot of that.
And Coach, I think that lends into something I wanted to ask you about. One of the things that I think is we talk about the talent, the development over the last 5 years, everything that goes into making a program elite. But one of the things that I think has really maybe impressed me the most is from day one, you've been consistent in your message to the players. So when they come in as a freshman, they're not hearing different things as a sophomore, different things as a junior. I mean, you've been very consistent in what you want out of your program. How do you think is that something you really prioritize from day one? And how has that lended into the culture that you've built over these last, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's huge. And the consistency fact was really important. And I know I think we're going to talk about this later, but I think this is important. I had a chance to spend 3 out of 5 years with Nick Saban. I went there in 2016 as an analyst. I went for 2 years with Dan Quinn with the Atlanta Falcons, and then 2 more years with him before I got this job. And then I'm going to credit Pete Carroll in this too. But one thing that I learned in that time, you knew exactly what you were going to get from Pete Carroll. I mean, from Nick Saban. I mean, it was like every day, it was like almost robotic, and the players knew what to expect. The assistant coaches knew what to expect. Very high standard, very high expectations of what was expected of you, but the approach that he had every single day, and it got me thinking, like, okay, let me think back to Pete Carroll. Well, Pete Carroll, very different than Nick Saban, but very consistent in who he was. And then I thought back to myself as a young head coach, right? When I was 33, 34 years old, the University of Washington, man, one day I was flying high. I was Pete Carroll at its max. The next day, man, I was trying to be Don James, when Coach James around. And then the next day I was trying to be Pete Carroll. And then the next day I was trying to be Jim Lambright. Then it was like, who was I? I didn't even know who I was. And so by the time I got this job, I think I had a lot better understanding of who I was, what was important to me, what did I want our team to embody in our style of play, in our approach, in the way our staff talk to our players. And then I've just tried to remain really consistent in that messaging so that there aren't mixed messages. And so that when I do hear players do interviews, I almost can hear me talking, right? Like they've been ingrained in this program and the way that we speak. And again, there's moments, yeah, coach knows better than anybody. Like there's moments you have to, whether it's raise your voice or have a little fun, and you got to get off that, but it doesn't have to be so extreme. And I felt like I was way too extreme early in my career. And I do think we have a level of consistency in our approach. And I think that helps a level of consistency in our work ethic, the style of players that we recruit, players that do fit our culture, and then ultimately the way we play the game.
Steve, you're the only team in the country that's kept your coordinators for 5 years. And that's such a credit and so hard to do. People are mad at them all the time. They want them fired, and they're usually getting head coaching jobs. So I always got confused. Do you feel like when you have change, it hurts continuity? Or do you feel like when you have change, it brings in new ideas? And
Wow.
do you have a long list of guys that, I know the running back coach I'm going to hire if I lose Coach Choice?
Yeah, that's a great one. That's like that paradox, right? Of which is better. And I do think for our players right now, what a value it is to hear a consistent same message from Pete Kwiatkowski on defense, Jeff Banks on special teams, myself and Kyle Flood on offense. Like year after year, as they grow in the system, there's a level of consistency. Now, with all that being said, we have evolved probably more than people would want to admit and or recognize. When we first got here on defense, we were a quarters defense, and we've evolved ourselves almost into a man-free defense that offsets it with cover two to give our corners a little bit of a break. And so that evolution has been huge. When we first got here offensively, I mean, I had Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson. I mean, we were ground and pound. The play action pass game was huge for us. And then as that evolved, especially last year when we lost Cedric and Christian, we became a little bit more of a spread it out, empty, get completions team that then use that to set up run games to get light boxes. And so that evolution, I think, comes from the influx of some new coaches that come onto your staff at position spots. We brought in at receiver coach Brennan Marion, who now is the head coach of Sac State, who went to UNLV as a coordinator. That we've since brought in Chris Jackson, who brought us an influx of NFL ideas and thoughts of what he did. We lost Stan Drayton. We brought in Tashard Choice, right? And then that gave us a different sense and a feel of the run game. And now we have Chad Scott, who was a coordinator at West Virginia and the running back coach. On defense, we've gone through some people. We thought Bo Davis was going to be the end of the world, and I love Bo Davis, and he's a great coach. But all the while, we bring in Kenny Baker, and this guy's like the second coming right now of his development of defensive linemen and recruitment of defensive linemen. We lose Jeff Choate, who was an integral part in starting this defense with PK, but we brought in Johnny Nansen, and that really started the shift from split safety defense to post high defense, to playing one high defense. And all the while, now this year we bring back Dwayne Aquina, who worked with Johnny Nansen in Arizona, and that all that did was now further us down that road of why those things were so important. So I think that's the first part. Those outside ideas help that. On the second part, coach, I try not to think about losing coaches, but it's a reality. And I do try to monitor, man, what's going on out there, who's doing good things. But I don't necessarily think, man, if this guy leaves, I'm going to hire him. I probably have a list of maybe 4 or 5 guys that would be worth talking to those guys, see what that looks like, and then start the ball of who kind of fits us and what we're about.
Yeah, it's just crazy, and especially the timing.
Yeah.
The
Right
timing is
before-
the worst part right now.
Yeah.
It's brutal because what happens, I'm going to get on a soapbox here. Okay. Well, we started this thing called the transfer portal, and then we decided to move signing date up. And so ADs now more than ever are so quick to fire head coaches because they want to bring in their new head coach to get in front of the December signing day and or get in front of the January portal window, which used to be the December portal window. Well, the head coach comes in and he's like, well, shoot, I got the job. I need staff. I'm going to go try to hire these coaches. And who do they go look to first? They go look to the teams that are playing good. And the teams that are playing good are still in the playoffs. And you got coaches thinking, well, so-and-so wants to talk to him about the coordinator job. And I'm thinking, well, crap, we're still in the playoffs,
Yeah.
But then I had to think back, well, that happened to me too. I was a coordinator and I got a head job twice late in the season and finished out my journey with the teams that I was on. So it's an interesting timing dynamic. But at the end, I think a lot of the coaches nowadays, when you're playing to the level that we're playing at, they want to finish the deal, man. They want to finish the job that the mission that we've been on. And I respect that for those guys for doing that.
That's great, coach. That's beautiful. That's what we wanted to talk about. Get it all off your chest.
I'm not short on words, VY.
Exactly.
Well, when that guy comes in 2-3 days before signing date and he's got 4 guys he's going to sign, and you've got to call that recruit and say, oh, by the way, he's leaving.
Yeah.
That's great
That doesn't
timing
go
too.
well.
Yeah, no,
That's not great.
that
Hey,
doesn't
hey,
work
coach,
well.
before we let you get out of here, coach, I did want to ask, you've been on the doorstep of getting back to the national title game. You've brought this program back to elite status in college football. And since Coach Brown is on here, I kind of wanted to ask, with Coach Royal and Coach Brown as the 2 coaches that have won national championships here at Texas, what would it mean to you to join that exclusive club?
Yeah. The first thing I want to hit on is the night I got hired, and we had a dinner at President Hartzell's office. And VY, I think you remember this. We were sitting next to each other that night. And mind you, I'm in the middle of a college football playoff. We had just won a national championship the night before. I mean, there was a million things going on. I didn't have all of my Texas kind of things that were big deals. And they had lit the tower that night. And VY reminds me that night, or says to me that night, he said, this is a pretty big deal. They lit the tower for you. And I was like, wow, okay. Well, now 5 years later, and you see the teams that have won national championships here, and when they light that tower and they put that one up and you get to take a picture with your team with the tower in the background, that to me, like that's the ultimate, right? Here on the 40 acres and what that means. The stuff down the road when you move on and time goes on and the personal things, those are great. And you think about Coach Royal and Coach Brown and what they were able to do, them winning national titles, the 1 and 2 or 3 that they got, I think was a byproduct of the time they had. What a run that Coach Brown had. What a run that Coach Royal had here, that, the highlight obviously is winning a national title. But like I said, when I got here, we were trying to build a program that could withstand the test of time, that we weren't going to be a one-hit wonder, that year in and year out, Texas was going to be on the forefront of college football. And I think we've gotten there. Now we have to sustain that. Do I want to win a national title? Of course I would. Of course that. I mean, don't get that mistaken. But I wanted as much or more anything for the players that were with us the last 4 years that went through 5-7 and 8-5. I want it for the current team we have now and what we've built, or the teams to come. And for that moment, right, to stand in front of the tower with that one up there, because to me that's the ultimate here. And hopefully that day will come, and to see what that looks like. And well, we won't stop trying. I can promise you that. So that's the fun part, and that's the great part of year in and year out, forging a new team, going to training camp, having fights in practice, all the stuff that's going on right now. And that's what camp's for.
Right.
And then offering putting a walk on scholarship last night and watching that celebration. Like, that's what camp is about. And you come together as a team, and then you go off on this journey, hopefully for 16 games, and the goal is to be in Miami January 19th. And then it's one game. Can we win it?
And Steve, I've got a promise for you. When we won the national championship that night, you were there. We talked about that. We're not going to talk a lot about it. I asked Coach Royal to come up on the stage with me, and he said, "Nope, your time. You enjoy this. You take care of it." So Sally and I are walking off the field, and we look up, and Miss Edith in her 80s is climbing up a ladder, and she's got adhesive tape, and she's putting a 4 with tape over the 3 national championships on the equipment truck. So when you win your national championship, and it's coming, I'm going to get up on that ladder with some adhesive tape, and I'm going to actually put a 5, which will be harder than the 4, but I've already worked on it some. But I'm going to be there to put a 5 on that equipment truck, because you're doing a great job.
Yes.
We always said, when you're in the neighborhood, it's coming. You're close. And everybody got to do 1% better, and everybody got to tweak a few things here and there, and then you got to be better than your opponents, and you got to be lucky. And you're getting ready for all that. So thank you for coming on. We love what you're doing. We appreciate it. Brings tremendous pride to this state. And I always said, it's not pressure in this state, it's pride.
That's right.
And that's what people love their football as much as anywhere in the country. And you're bringing that pride back, and it's so special to watch.
Yeah, great
Well,
job,
I
Coach.
appreciate y'all, and get out to practice, guys.
I'll be there next Saturday.
I know you're missing it. I know you need a little fix.
I'll be there next Saturday for you, baby.
Run in your life, BYU a little when they're smack talking going on, offense, defense. So come on out. Love to have y'all guys. Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Coach.
Hook 'em, y'all.
Steve, I know you've got a million
Thank
things
you.
to do. We're so appreciative for you coming on with us, and we'll talk to you soon. That is head coach Steve Sarkisian here
Thanks,
on the
Coach.
Stampede. All right, welcome back to the Stampede, a podcast on the Texas Longhorns, sponsored by Rise Energy Strips, our sponsor since day one. We appreciate them and everything they're doing for our podcast here. Alongside Mac Brown and Vince Young, I'm Bob Ballou, and man, our first guest in the history of the Stampede was a pretty good one. Steve Sarkisian joined us, and if you definitely want to get back and hear all the things that he said, but I want to get to Mac and Vince and hear what maybe got them the most. What was it that Steve said that really stood out to you? Vince, name me something that you said, man, that's it, or that's something I needed to know.
Well, one of the things that resonated with me was, how he has to come to that facility every day, the same guy every day. And I remember one time when I was going through that situation with when I was there, me and Coach Brown and Coach Davis. One day they pulled me to the side and like, Vince, you know that you got to come here every day with the same attitude, the same character, the same person every day, because your teammates are watching you. And if you have a bad practice and you come in, guess what your guys are going to do? So I didn't understand that for a long time until I asked Coach, and you guys, told me like, well, I was paying attention to them, the way they carry themselves. They came in with the same energy, the things that they had to do for us to see our leader be the coach that he was. And I had to understand that. And then when I saw that out of him, it resonated for me, and it made me have a better understanding why. Because sometimes I come there, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, I just do 2 picks at practice, or something happened with my girlfriend. It could be multiple things that happen, but in the same time, I really understood where coach was coming from. And then when I did have bad practice and I was getting mad at myself, I started seeing the energy in my teammates. So I had to make sure that I went back home that day and got in my room and got some rest and, said my prayers and things like that. It really hit home with me that I started to understand that I am the leader of this team and I got to carry myself in the right way. So to hear Coach Stark say that a lot of people are paying attention to him, not just his team, his coaches, even the media, even the fans, everybody is paying attention to him every day. And for him to take that on his shoulder and do that every day is just to show you what type of coach he is. And that's why we're going in the right direction. I'm glad that he's our head coach.
Man, it's all the stuff that a 20, 21-year-old deals with on a daily basis, and you kind of forget that part of it. Everybody looks at what you do on the field, even the work that you do off the field as a football player, but you've got to deal with so much stuff as a 20 to 21-year-old as well. Coach Brown, I loved you're putting the number 5 on the truck. That was great. I really enjoyed that. What was your biggest takeaway from what Steve told us?
The biggest thing to me was that Steve is very confident and very comfortable in himself. He learned some things from all the different coaches that he played for or coached with, Coach Saban, Coach Carroll, but now he's him. And like Vince said, he has to bring it every day. You have to bring energy every day. People look at you because they know you have more information than anybody else as a head coach. So they're watching your body language. They're watching your attitude. If you're down, they're down. So you don't have any time off. You have a huge responsibility as a leader, as a quarterback, and a leader as a head coach, and a leader as coordinators and coaches to bring it every day. Create that edge every day and improve every day. And if everybody on the Texas team improves 1% from last year, they'll win a national championship. But get rid of your selfishness. Vince just talked about all the things. Coaches have children, they have wives, they have bad days, they have stuff happen in their lives, they have sickness, they have death, they still got to go to work. And you can't bring your personal life to work when you're in football. No excuses, no regrets. Go do your job and do it at a very high level and make sure that when you agreed to be the quarterback, you agreed to take on that responsibility. When you agreed to be the head coach at Texas, there's a tremendous amount of pride, but there's a tremendous amount of pressure. And I told a little story about eating the cheese. Well, Texas football team right now got to be really careful not to eat the cheese because Vince said it. When you're number 1 in the country and when you're Texas, you are circled.
Yes.
Every team on their schedule said, we got to beat Texas. And Texas has got to be talking about beating the team they play this week and getting better. And you really, this time of year, you can't even talk about beating Ohio State. You got to talk about getting better. It's the process. And if you get as good as you can get, then that's going to put you in a position where you can beat Ohio State. But if you're talking about Ohio State not getting any better, it hurts you. Sonia Richards-Ross married Aaron Ross. She was a great track star at Texas. She loses a gold medal, and we asked her why. She came and talked to the team, and she said, I got off my process. I got nervous. I didn't sleep well. I didn't hydrate as well, so I pulled up and I didn't finish. Well, why did you win a gold? I went back to who I was. I went back to my routine. I went back to everything I did every day that put me in the Olympics. That's what the Texas football team is doing right now, and that's what I heard from Sark. And then yesterday they have an injury. I mean, you got injuries, you got to hit. And then you got to be lucky because you hit those big guys and somebody rolls into somebody else and loses him for the year. And then you say, was that drill worth it? It doesn't matter. You got to hit, but you got to recruit well enough to have enough depth that when you do hit and you lose somebody, it doesn't change the scope of your year. So a tremendous amount of pressure on head coaches across the country. Tremendous amount of pressure on the assistant coaches because they've got mental health of the players, as Vince was talking about, but they also have to win games. And then tremendous amount of pressure on those players. And now you got 105 players, only 11 can play at a time. So how many disappointed kids that came to Texas thinking, I'm going to be the guy? Well, you're 45th on that team. Coach got to handle that depression. Coach got to handle pressure from parents. Now you got to handle pressure from agents. Coach has got to handle pressure from high school coach. He can transfer. He can leave tomorrow. So it's just it's a heavy load, and one that when you decide you put that coach on your jacket, like Vince said, you better be ready to do it every day. And I see a very confident, very positive, very upbeat, very fresh Steve Sarkisian that's leading this team, and he's doing a tremendous job.
Well,
and
to
what
your
they
point,
said,
no, go ahead, Vince.
what's the saying? Everybody asks you, how you doing? And you say, I can't complain. When shit, don't nobody want to hear it if you was.
Even if you wanted to.
It's what my granddad used to say. When somebody says, how are you doing? Say fine, but don't tell them, because they didn't care. They didn't ask you to know how you were doing. They're just saying hello.
Just being polite.
Yeah.
Just being polite. That's all. Well, camp is underway, and we certainly appreciate Steve taking the time to join us. Obviously, he has so much going on in his day-to-day life right now, and trying to get these guys in the right positions. But I think it speaks to what Mac and Vince mean to Steve and in the history of this program. Steve's very open and honest about his reverence for college football, and I know he reveres you two guys as well. We do want to get into a little bit of camp. I want to say one thing that I thought was really cool about Sark and your surroundings and everything that you go through, to think that just a couple days before you were getting ready to win the national championship, Mac, that Steve was sitting at your table as an opposing coach. And here we are 20 years later doing what we didn't know then as a podcast. And we're talking, about that story and how it all comes full circle. It is pretty wild the way these things work out. But you guys brought up something that's probably on the minds of all Texas fans, the loss of Andre Kojo, and whether or not he was going to win the starting job, it's still a piece of that offensive line. And, I was talking to Vince, and we were kind of trying to remember did anybody really go down during that 2005 season? And sometimes you've just got to get lucky, get away with injuries on that front. Texas now has Brandon Baker and Trevor Gooseby and Jaden Chapman. And beyond that, I know Sark rotates guys and gets them in positions, but, they've got to figure out the depth now at offensive tackle. What's the toughest part of that? What's the toughest thing that goes into you have that cohesion, you feel comfortable with your guys, and somebody goes down. Vince, as a quarterback, what makes that so difficult?
Well, thank God I had guys like Jonathan Scott, Justin Blake, Will Allen, Casey Stutter, Lyle Sinline that didn't have too many injuries. They played some crazy number how many games they started without being injured. So I was blessed to have those guys, with the chemistry and the guys who protected me, and I was blessed to have that. So at this standpoint, as a quarterback standpoint, you got to know what your guys are doing up front. Is this guy going to take second down off? Is he going to take third down out? Because sometimes you can feel that pressure from certain areas doing the blitz, because a guy might took a play off, or he wasn't too sure of the offense. So as a quarterback, you have to step your level up to know that you got to slide a little bit more towards the left, or you got to slide a little bit more to the right to get get that pass off. But in the same time, I think Coach Flood's going to do a good job of getting them guys ready. But in the same time, you always got to take your game to another level as a quarterback, knowing what's going on with a lot of the rotations and things like that, what's going on right now with Texas football.
Mac, how do you shuffle when that stuff happens?
Bob, they had 123 starts in the offensive line last year, and they got 45 right now.
Wow.
And they've got 4 new starters. And you've got to go back and work on the running game. You got to work on short yardage and goal line. That's where you get guys hurt. There's more guys hurt in preseason than any other time of the year. The second most injuries occurs during the open date. And it's because you can hit more and you're working on more things. But right now they've got to work on short yardage and goal line, because that's where you win games. Yeah. And your offensive line hadn't done that before. And that's where you get wadded up, and you can have an offensive or defensive lineman, more of them hurt when you're scrimmaging in those areas or having full speed. And the other thing that happens is when you lose one, you lose depth. As the way Vince's offense moved the ball, we scored 50 points a game. They stayed out there a long time. They get tired. Those big bodies, 350-pound man gets tired in that heat.
Losing
So
weight and
you
everything.
you need more players. So Coach Sark's got to do a great job right now of trying to push those guys. Do the best you can do to keep them in situations where they're more likely to be healthy, but try to find at least 7, 8 guys. Pros play with 7, 8 guys in the offensive line. You don't have to have 10. Very few people do. But if you can find 7 or 8, and right now the right guard and right tackle are where they're really looking at where we can get more stability, and they'll be fine because they got a quarterback that can run, which really helps the offensive line. That's why we put Vince in the first place. Chance Mock couldn't run as well as Vince. We weren't blocking people. All the guys he mentioned were young, so they weren't ready to go. So Arch gives them that advantage. And then you got the great running backs. You got 2 up for the Doak Walker Award. That makes your offensive line better when you got great people behind them that can run.
Well, we will continue to follow that storyline as we move forward, as all the storylines across Texas football through preseason camp. 3 more weeks until Ohio State. It's coming quick, and you guys know how quickly this stuff comes. You're trying to get there and get your team there and get yourself ready, but this has never happened before. Number 1 versus number 2 to open a season for the first time in college football history. All right, Mac Brown, Vince Young, thank you guys as always. Enjoyed this podcast. It was a lot of fun getting to talk to Sark, wasn't it?
That was a whole lot of fun. And I know our fans enjoyed it too. It's very unique, and thank him so much for spending time with us.
Man, he looked like he's in shape. Looked like he's been playing too out there.
He did. I know he's not sleeping much.
Exactly.
Getting that exercise in for sure, but he's definitely
Right.
not sleeping these days. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the 3rd edition of The Stampede, a podcast on the Texas Longhorns, sponsored by Rise Energy Strips. We always appreciate you guys listening and or watching. For Vince Young and Mac Brown, I'm Bob Ballou, sports director at CBS Austin. See you next time.